guys. Talk about tons of plays today. Tons of plays today. This is my HNRA chart. See if I can zoom in. All my charts, all my trades are in the morning. I longed it off at 250. This is the same pre-market long as my APLM long in the pre-market. Call it my long at the top, long at the top strat. Make 30%. I'll show you the book map behind it. It's the same book map. And then I did a scalp on this little aggressive push off of support. No bid follow-up, but since it's so far away from high day, I scalped most of it off of the 3 crack, and then I just had break even on the rest, and then I missed actually the A plus trade. I thought this candle here was A plus, but I just didn't act. Kind of annoying because it faded a good 20-25%. But we'll go into the chart. So for this video and every video going forward, I have the real book map now. So I'm no longer using Thinkorswim's book map. I'm using the actual book map. But we'll talk about HNRA. First thing we want to look at is it has this daily, right? It has this so it's a SPAC chart. So SPACs start at $10, and they in cases like this, some insiders or somebody, I didn't really super deep look into the fundamentals of the play. Besides that, it's a tiny flow, de-SPAC stock down 90%, so it does have gap fill potential. I actually tend to be pretty bearish moves. These like instant low volume, 90-95% dumps that start making backside moves. They could actually have multiple legs on them, especially these tiny float SPAC stocks. So going into the pre-market, I was already decently bullish on the situation. And if we look at the book map, so this is, where is it? There we go. The real book map. I can move it around a lot easier. We can look at different things, but you could see that on, let's see what the easiest way to do this is. So on this push, so this is the push right here, the first push above 2.6, where it pulls back to the 1 minute 9 at VWAP. I was just looking at this thing, I'm like, well, how do you know if it's just like a quick pre-market pop that fades, or if it does, or if it's not a quick pre-market pop that fades? Sorry, there we go. Gonna have to get used to the new setup here. The simple answer is, when you look at the book, do you see offers on the ask stack higher, and do you see a lack of bid stack lower, right? If I see, a good example would be SMX that, had a nice little high day push today in the pre-market, but there were no bids following that move up, and then they insta-pulled it. There were a few bids down lower, but no buying, and it just went straight down. But HNRA, I see this move. I see the pullback from 2.6 down to the 1 minute 9 here, and then I start seeing some bids. And I start seeing some more bids. I'm looking at the order book, right? Order book's really empty. There's one guy here at 2.6, but everything between 2.3s and 2.6 is empty, and everything between 2.6 and 2.7s is empty. So I'm like, okay, empty order book, and I see some bids down low. But a very bullish thing you want to see is you want to see bids. Not only are there bids down low, but on the pushes higher are bids following it up, right? And this is what I saw here when I saw not only these bids stack lower, but this guy in the 2.4s and this guy in the high 2.3s, low 2.4s. So mid 2.4s, low 2.4s, and these guys. And then I was longing in here, so I took the long into 2.5s, and I started longing after I saw this guy show up. So I had multiple layers of bids, a relatively empty order book above high day, and if we really zoom out, you'll see that the order book, outside of a few levels, is pretty thin all the way up to 3. So I knew this had a ton of space to kind of move through. So I got the initial squeeze I wanted, but I actually didn't see any bids follow it up here initially, so I instantly started taking some profit in the mid 2.7s. You can see that on my chart here. See it on my chart here. But I was like, sometimes bids just take a little bit of time to really show up. So we get the high day push. And then I start seeing new bids, and then I start seeing new bids, and then I start seeing new bids. So I was like, okay, cool. Like when you see new bids, and if we zoom out, so we got new bids here, empty order book to the upside. I'm like, oh, this could easily just push to 3, right? Like why wouldn't in the pre-market on these tiny float stocks, in a stronger market especially, when the volume's picking up, I mean, why not? Why just they'll just throw some bids, get tested, and it just fills the space up to 3. So I see it, take out that 24,000 share 3 ask. It pulls down, and now I'm starting to see more bids. I'm like, oh, cool, there's even more bids. Like the best longs, if you look at Mike Underdog's videos, he'll talk about holding your core position, and the way you hold your core and make 30%, 50%, 100% on a long is you just want to see bids constantly followed up, and you want to see a relatively order book to the upside with a good thesis, right? What's nice about this play is like we have, these tiny float SPACs are heavily manipulated. They make big moves, so that's bullish, possibly bullish. You got a little gap fill kind of potentially, and I'm not saying it's going to reach $7, $8, but it'll do some type of move, down 90% from highs. It has, a lot of the best longs have a reason to run, and that's a good enough reason. Like it's a good enough, it's in a category of stocks that makes moves, and the daily, you get a kind of a mean reversion gap fill type of daily, and you get this, you combine that with the thin order book and the bids following it up, and it's a good long. It's a really nice long. And then yeah, here we get a deeper pullback to 2.6s, and really my average was in 2.5. So I was like, you know what? As long as bids keep following this up, I'm going to keep holding. And I got the secondary squeeze, and again, I saw no bids follow this up, so I started taking a lot of profit up here, and then when this knifed, I just took the rest of my profit out. I'm like, you know what? That's a good enough move. This is a big, this is like 2.8s to 3.4s. I'm like, that's a good enough move. The bids didn't follow it up, and now it's getting kind of extended. I'm like, you know what? I'll just take the rest out. And that was my long trade. And then my short, I didn't really have, again, like, looking at the book, I didn't want to, there's really nothing here that really made me want to short. Like, I don't want to short over here because I don't really see any ask up higher, and I see bids down lower. So I'm like, well, what's the edge? I'm like, yeah, sure, it's getting, if we go back to the pre-market, we had a nice squeeze, and it's pulling back, but just because it's pulling back doesn't mean it's weak. Just because these bounces aren't going anywhere doesn't mean it's weak. It just, if I see bids on the book and I don't see a lot of ass stacked higher, then there's nothing that I'm not going to short, this bounce, even though it ended up going down, because I just see bids, and what if this trade doesn't work, right? What do I have the risk? Like this one dude all the way up here, like. So I didn't really have the read on this. I wasn't long anymore, and when I don't have the read on something, I just wait for market open to see what happens. And I didn't really see anything at market open in terms of a short. Some of the stuff was okay, but I thought the volume on this was actually kind of nutty. I started seeing 1 million, 1.5 million, 1 million, and I thought this could be kind of nuts, right? And then we saw some classic stuff that I've been pointing out in my videos. These, like, again, in these strong markets, these quick pullbacks through this empty space, they keep getting rotated, they keep squeezing shorts. We could see this on the book. We could see this empty space get attacked right here. So here's this empty, here it creates this empty order book. Like, imagine chasing down here. Like, you have maybe a few orders here and here, right? And yeah, there's only one bid, so that's not bad. But what if that bid doesn't get broken, right? Like, there's all this empty space on the book. And this was nice. Actually, this was a nice long. I just didn't read it. I just didn't have the read when the $3 bid held, and then new bids started showing up. So, but yeah, that's why that's the reason these types of squeezes happen, is because you get a high day push, and then you get an instant 15% pullback in 3 minutes, right? A lot of shorts chase, a lot of longs stop themselves out, and it just creates this air pocket to squeeze back into. And unless there's something really, really nice on the book up here that kind of tells me, um, that it's a possible top situation. Say, for example, on my THR video yesterday, I talked about big bids pulling, new ash showing. You get a 15, 20, 30K bid that was there, then 90% of it disappears right before the 15% correct. Stuff like that. There's little signals at the top that can really give you some confidence. Like, hey, that's a pretty good topping move. It's a key sign that the rigger at the top is possibly liquidating the position. There's no more liquidity. They're dumping it. That type of thing. And then yeah, I didn't have the read on this soak candle. I actually thought this soak candle was really interesting, and there was a bunch of ask on that soak candle here. I saw this stall into these ask up here, and I was like, man, should I short 340s up here? This might be a good trade. But then I saw the bids, and I wasn't quite sure if those bids were going to pull. And they actually ended up pulling here. So this actually would have been a great place to short in the high 330s, low 340s when these bids started pulling. And you had all these offers stacked to the upside. See, you see how that now becomes like a much better short, that we get multiple high day squeezes, and then you start getting moves like these 20-cent dips with these 20-cent reclaims, and then you start to look at the book, right? You start to look at the book, and then you start seeing bids get pulled, and you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 8 levels of ask to risk into, and like besides this one guy here, it's an empty book. Now, I mean, new bids can always come into the stock, but at the moment you're making this trade, say it's right here, you just see empty bids to the downside, and you see a bunch of orders up top, and you see bids getting pulled. I mean, then you just make the best trade you can at the time, and I didn't have the read on this, and I felt kind of mad about that. But my scalp short was this. So it's, again, a lot of times the reason these extreme candles where it's like, and we saw this on RDHL, which I also shorted. I'll show you, even though I ended up like mostly losing, but on these candles, 1126, 1127, and I shorted this second push in the mid 190s here. And I thought this was gonna. I thought they were dumping. H.C. Wainwright was dumping warrants, and they were just gonna dump this straight down. And I had a 195 average up here. Same concept though. Like, these extreme candles create an empty order book to the downside, right? It's the opposite of short trappy action at the top. This is long trappy action on the backside, or potentially. Obviously, this did a crazy move. But this was a good trade with a good thesis, and that's why it also works over here, right? But the thing is, since this is so far away from high day, I tend to get very scalpy, right? Especially I know that these tiny float SPAC names can be really heavily manipulated. So we go back here, we get a nice crazy push. Here's a crazy push. It takes out the 3.2, but what I'm always interested in is what is the buying looking like, because this was a 20,000 share ask here. Okay, the 20,000 share ask gets broken, but what's the buying above that looking like, right? Because that's a major resistance level. If it's going to keep pushing, I'm going to want to see a lot of buying above 320. So what do we get here? Very little buying, and then we get a bid. I'm like, okay, the bid's there. We get another, and then we see 320 stack again. That gets taken out, and now it's above 320, and there's still no buying. And I actually just shorted straight into this. I was like, I'm zooming out. I'm like, dude, the book's empty. It's breaking 320, but it's not. It's not. There's no buying appetite in above this 322, 323 level, and I actually just shorted in the 320s. And it seems like, sometimes like the read is so good and so obvious why it's like why it would work once you start to look at the book. that you start top ticking, little bounces like this, right? You start to see the lack of buying. I do have some ask up higher that I can risk, right? I got 330s, right? And I got this guy at 325 who's not even getting touched. Um, and then when it cracks, we start to get new ask, new ask, new ask, and a big crack. I was already short before these asks even showed up, but this is even more confirmation that this one bidder is going to get broken. And look at that. Look, since there's no orders on the book until sub 3, this just goes from 310 to 293 in about, this dump is about 1 second. That's a 20-cent dump in 1 second, and you're short up here, right? So, but yeah, I started covering into this again. Here's a new bidder showing up, 10,000 shares. Here's a new bidder, so I started covering. Covered 60%. Again, I get very scalpy the far away I am from high day, and I just risk. I just put my risk up here where this ask was, and I got stopped out. Pretty much break even for the rest. Only other thing I'm mad about is missing this. This is a classic. Like, a lot of times, especially if a stock has already squeezed multiple times, a lot of times these aggressive moves don't break high day. It's really ironic that the more aggressive the move is off of support, and the more up only it is up of support, if you get this, again, it's the same concept, low volume pullback with a secondary retail push. I don't know why I didn't short this candle. Like, I saw this 1046 candle, I saw it break this 347 flat top, and I don't know why I didn't just short 340. It's 349, and that was the beginning of a nice, what is that, like a 20% fade or something like that. But yeah, if we look at the book, we can actually see that in action. Here's the second retail push. See all these green bulbs? All these people chasing. Ask gets filled, ask gets filled, ask gets filled, ask gets filled, but there's more here, there's more here, there's more here, and where are the bids, right? There's a few random ones showing up, but it's mostly an empty book, down to 320. And then you're in a potential backside situation, because this is a very nice long trap at the top, and that could produce big fades, right? So even if there are bids lower, it's worth taking. What's important is that there's no bids where the push is, right? Where, this push, right? This is empty. These bids are empty. So I'm pissed I missed that. I would have made up for a lot of my RDHL losses and stuff like that, but overall, these were some nice reads. And then I actually wasn't really paying attention to this in the afternoon. I thought, oh, it's doing crazy SPAC stuff. Essentially what I thought. I was like, it's doing crazy SPAC stuff. But some of these actually weren't bad, like these shorts. Like, look at this. You got this aggressive move from 3.6s to $4, and then a bunch of big asks start to show up. This is actually nice. You could have shorted in like the 380s here. And look at this crack. You could have shorted up here, risking this ask, and even if you're just scalping it, you would have got a 40-cent crack right away. That's an easy 10%. Now, of course, it did, manipulated SPAC stuff, but that was a good trade. I was kind of sad looking back on this. I didn't hit that, but also up here, this is pretty nice, even though there were some bids. But anyway. HNRA, interesting one. I'll do another video on RDHL and ICCM. See you guys.